Okay, today let me talk about the unemployment. The most of the people in this world rely on a job to make a living. So employment is so critical for the stability of a society and for the people living in a country. The unemployment rate is a key indicator of the overall labor situation in a country. So the labor force actually is the total, the sum of the employment and unemployment, which means the people who are working or the people who are looking for the work currently. And the labor force participation rate is the total labor force divided by the population age 16 and older. So the kids under 16 are not considered as the legitimate workers. Then we can calculate the unemployment rate, which is the number of the unemployed workers divided by the total labor force multiply 100. And this is where the unemployment rate comes from. And sometimes the unemployment rate can overstate the true level of unemployment. For example, a worker may be able to get a job immediately, but that job may not fit his skill set very well, and she or he wouldn't get a satisfied paycheck, so she or he probably will defer to accept a rush offer, and she or he probably will keep looking for a better job to get a better pay and to get a better personal satisfaction. So, and in that regard, her or his unemployment is at his or her best interest, and that overstate the true level of the unemployment. And as I understand, most of the case, the unemployment rate is understated. That because of three additional categories of workers, like discouraged workers who are capable of working but just quit looking for job, marginal attached workers is in a similar situation. They want to work and recently still looked for work but quit because the difficulty of finding a job and underemployment. Those workers are also capable of working full-time, but were not able to find the full-time job. They currently are working part-time. So these three categories are not considered as unemployment, but they either involuntarily quit looking for job or voluntarily work part-time, so only probably meet their end needs. So in this regard, unemployment rate is understated. In general, the employment correlates with the business growth. During the extensions, the unemployment can be pretty low, pretty reasonable. During the recessions, the unemployment rate could be pretty high. If you recall, during the financial crisis back in 2009, 2010, that period of time, if I remember correctly, the unemployment rate even reached double digits. There are two kinds of unemployment. One is the frictional unemployment, which correspond to the overstating situations or scenarios of unemployment rate, which means, some workers actually are capable of getting a job pretty quickly, but they want to defer that to find a better one. And even in the market, the jobs are, are plenty enough to satisfy all the job seekers. There are still some workers intentionally to be unemployed for their own best interest. So this is a frictional unemployment. And another one is a structural unemployment, which means, the workers in a particular labor market to compete for the jobs. The jobs are not enough for all the seekers to be filled. So this could be caused by like a minimum wage, the side effect of the government policies, the efficiency wages. Efficiency wages actually is the wages the firms are willing to pay to their capable workers to maintain or to retain them, and that actually cause the issues for the new workers to join. And sometimes it's caused by the mismatches between the employee and the employers. And the natural rate, generally, the unemployment rate cannot be zero. There's always a natural rate of unemployment there. And the natural unemployment is the sum of the frictional and structural we talk about, and the actual unemployment is the natural unemployment plus the cyclical. Cyclical unemployment refers to those workers who lose their jobs during the trough or the recession in a business cycle. I already talked about the inflations before, and there isn't new thing about this concept. Of course, one concept I didn't mention before is the disinflation. Disinflation is a process of having the well-established high inflation rate dropped. So it's a very painful and costly process. Generally, it requires an extended period of high unemployment. Let me elaborate a little bit. This means, sometimes the high inflation rate already been established for quite a long time, and which actually hurts the national economy, right? And that's very, very understandable. And the government has to force that well-established inflation rate dropped to a reasonable level. So they have to adopt some process to do it. And that process is disinflation. Well, going or review all this concept, probably we can draw a conclusion, right? Creating the jobs is very important for a country's economy, and it's, especially in U.S., right? We are consumer-driven economy, and we need the people to get people into the job market and to make them pay the money and to spend. And that's very, very, very important. And as I shared in my last posting, so we need to encourage the firms in private sector to invest more aggressively into the manufacturing, productions, and technologies, and that will create more meaningful jobs and to satisfy the workers. And even the unemployment rate currently is pretty reasonable. It's like a 5 point something, right? There could be still a lot of problem being, existing there. For example, we don't know whether most of the workers are satisfied with their paycheck. They may think, they are underqualified, right? Because their skills are not fully utilized, and that's why they don't make the money as they expect. And we also, I actually don't know how significant the portions of all those three categories of workers, like marginally attached workers, discouraged workers, and underemployment workers, how significant the portions of those workers are. If that is a significant percentage, that is a problem we need to fix. And due to the structural unemployment, a lot of workers may not be able to find a job in long term, if not forever. So how can we resolve the issues due to this structural unemployment? That's another legitimate question, right? And in addition to encouraging the firms to create jobs, by investing, we also need to provide the trainings to the workers whose skill set already out of date, or whose skill set or the jobs already been eliminated. The jobs, their skill set fit already been eliminated due to the various reasons. So we need to provide the trainings to those workers to gain the new skill, to find a new job, and to have a middle-class life. Compared to a lot of other advanced economies, we have a lot of room to improve in that regard. Frankly, I don't see many trainings are available to those workers who desperately are looking for the new opportunities to change. And yesterday morning, the consumer consumer confidence index was released, which significantly dropped from 99.1 to 94 in November from October. It's almost a 9 points drop, which was a surprise, because as I heard, the 99.4 was the forecast, and it's actually 9 points drop. The main driver for the low consumer confidence index was the pessimism for the job market for the next couple months. So that raises a question: how can we resolve that concern?